Okay, in this section they're wanting you to graph each equation, and I'm not sure they were really clear to you if you were reading the instructions about how you were supposed to do this. So I would make a video to show you in case we don't have school due to a cold weather day. Okay, when you're doing, this is called standard form, and it's when your x and your y are on the same side and your number's on the other side. Now there's some things about standard form you need to know, and I tried to get that across in the book, but I'm not sure if you really got the point. In standard form, you can't have any fractions in the equation. Your x term needs to be positive. And then the other thing that's a little more evident that really, I guess the first thing you probably should do to put things in standard form if they're not, is the x and the y term are usually on the left side of your equation. And your constant, the 10 is the constant, it's the plain old number, does not have a variable. That's what a constant is. It's a number that does not have a variable on it. And the constant goes on the right side. This equation is in standard form. The x is positive, the x and y are on one side, the number's on the other side, there's no fractions in it, so this is standard form. Okay, and the easiest way to graph these is to find your x and y intercepts. Let's go talk about that for a minute. If you're finding your x and your y intercepts, here's the way to remember what to do. To find your x-intercept, set y equal to 0. To find your y-intercept, set x equal to 0. If you want to remember it really easily, you just set the opposite variable equal to 0 if you're finding an intercept. Okay, so if I want my x-intercept, let's do that first. I'll do it like in green, just so we have different colors for each one. So the x-intercept. So I'm going to copy my equation down, and I'm going to plug in 0 for y. I'm going to plug in 0 for y. Because it's the x-intercept, it's the opposite variable. X minus 0 is x, and then you got 10. So I've got a point. It's actually a point. Make sure you write it as a point. X is 10, and we set y equal to 0. Remember, the x comes first, and then the y. For the y-intercept, we're going to set x equal to 0. So we're going to plug in x equal to 0. And write it like that, and then go put the y in there when I get it. So here's the equation again. The blue one's going to be the y-intercept. So I'm going to plug in x is 0. 0 minus y is 10. So that's negative y is equal to 10. And if I want to get rid of the negative, I can divide both sides by -1. I can multiply both sides by -1. And the quick way to do that is to change the signs on both sides. I'll just divide by -1. Because if you think about it, there's a -1 in front of that y. So if you want to follow normal rules, you would just divide by the -1. They would cancel out, and I'd get y as -10. So now if I want to graph this, I only need 2 points. These are the easiest points to get when you get stuff in standard form. If I were to say this is, let's see, over here I got -10. Let me put it in the point. All I need to do is graph these 2 points now and connect them to get my line. Okay, so if x is, let me do it in red here. The x-intercept is 10, 0. So let's say this is 10 out here. I'd put a dot on it. The y-intercept is 0, -10. So that means it's going to be down here, because on the y-axis the negatives are down here. So let's say that's -10. You go put a dot on it. And then all I got to do to draw it is to connect and make a line. Okay, I'm going to do some of these that are a little usually confuse people. And one of them is like number 33. The equation is x equal 4. Read this way. X is always 4. I can pick any y I want to. Okay, so they're saying y doesn't matter, x is 4. Well, if you think of it that way, I want to show you what happens. Here's 4. And so what I do, here's how I kind of finally got this down, because I had a hard time with this when I was learning it. If x is 4, I could pick y as 0. Well, that'd be right here, wouldn't it? If x is 4, what if I picked y as 1? If x is 4, I could pick -1. Oh, look at that. That's a vertical line. Anytime you see x equal a number, it's a vertical line through that number. Okay? We're going to learn a lot about that in the next section of the book, but this right now, that's all you need to know. And you can think of it this way, and you can always get your figure it out if you do this. I'm going to do another one that's similar to it. Look at 35. Y equal -3. This is a line. It's not just a number. It's a line when we graph it. And so if I draw my little coordinate grid again, this equation is telling me y is always -3, no matter what x I pick. If you think of it that way, it can help you never get confused about it. So let's pick a point. Let's say y is -3, and it means I can pick any x I want to, so I'm just going to pick two different x's that have -3 in it. So let's say, what if I pick 0, -3? Let x be 0. Well, if x is 0, y is -3. Let's say I pick x is 3. If x is 3, y is still -3. I could have picked x to be -1. Oh, y is still -3. Remember, this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. So look what I get. I get a horizontal line. Anytime you see y equals a number, it's a horizontal line. So it doesn't matter what x I pick, y is always -3. Okay? If you can keep that straight, you'll never have a problem graphing that function. So try to think of it that way. It's one of those things that you're probably going to find you struggle with later on, but maybe if you think of it this way, it will help. Okay, now this looks a little weird, doesn't it? This is not in standard form. So one thing I could do is get it in standard form, or get it in a form where it makes more sense. Right now it looks very strange. So here's what I would do. I got a fraction equal a fraction. If you remember proportions, what I can do, this is really a proportion, isn't it? 2 times y is 2y. I can cross multiply. This is just kind of a weird one, and they're just writing them all kinds of weird ways to see if you can figure out what to do. 3 times x is 3x. If I want to get both of these terms on one side so it looks a little better, I could subtract the 2y from both sides. That will not combine with that x, will it? These 2y minus 2y, a lot of times I say it cancels out, but here, if I don't put anything down and just cancel it out, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? It actually adds up to 0, so we have to put the 0 here. Otherwise, you're not going to have an equation. You're just going to have an equal sign and 3x minus 2y, which is not very helpful. That is now in standard form if I just write it like this. Just switch the sides on it. Okay, so if I want to graph this now, it's like the other ones. When it's in standard form, the easiest way to graph is to graph the x and y intercept. And again, we're going to learn other ways to graph later, but this is the best thing to do when you get standard form. All right, so let's find the x-intercept. That means I'm going to set the opposite variable equal to 0, set y equal to 0. That means when I get done, I'm going to have a point that has a 0 in the y, and I'm going to find the x that goes with that. Okay, so I'm going to do that in blue. 3x minus 2, I got to plug in my y, is equal to 0. Well, y is 0, so I'm going to plug it in. So 2 times 0 is 0. 3x minus 0 is 3x. 3x equal to 0. If I want to solve for x, I divide both sides by 3, and I get x is 0. So I get the point 0, 0. We'll graph it in a minute. Actually, I'll go ahead and do a little graph here. If I graph 0, 0, it's right here, isn't it? Try to draw in red. Oh, thought I switched colors, but it didn't take. Let me draw in red. Okay. Now I need to find the y-intercept. I'll come over here and work on that. I'm kind of draw. Find y-intercept. And remember, when I'm finding intercept, that means set x equal to 0. Set the opposite variable equal to 0. So x is going to be 0, and I'm going to find the y that goes with it. So I'm just going to plug in x equals 0. I'm going to go back to this form right here. 3x minus 2y equals 0. Okay, but I'm going to plug in x is 0 here. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 2y is negative 2y. But I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to divide by negative 2. And I'm going to get y equals 0, because 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. Oh, that's not very helpful, is it? Because look at my x-intercept and look at my y-intercept. They're the same point. I can't graph this line if I don't have 2 points. So I only got 1 point out of that. Let me do this. Let me go to a new page. Or let me erase some stuff here. Okay, so what am I to do? My x and my y-intercept ended up being the same thing. Well, I need to find another point, because we don't know how to graph any other way right now. By the way, you can always find points on a graph and graph from the points. It's just sometimes harder to do it that way. So I have 3x minus 2y is 0. So I can pick any x I want to and plug it in. I'm going to pick x is 2, just for, you know. If x is 2, I'm going to plug in 2. Let me write my point down over here. That means I plugged in x is 2. I've got to find the y that goes with it. Okay, so that would be 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 2y is 0. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. Okay, so I subtracted 6 from both sides. So that it gives me, that canceling out, I get negative 2y, and 0 minus 6 is negative 6. And now I want to solve for y. So to solve for y, it's multiplied by negative 2. The opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2 on both sides. That gives me y equal negative 6 divided by negative 2 is negative divided by negative is a positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3. That gives me the point 2, 3. Okay, so now let me go graph that point, because I just needed one more. So if weird things happen, you can always pick another x and find a y with it that goes with it, and you can always graph that way. You just, you'll have to go off and do this. So I've got the point 2, 3. There's 2. Here's 3 here. So then once I get the 2 points, I'm done.